Welcome, Martin, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Aephanemer and this new album, Utopia, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we are starting by asking how are you doing today, and how is the band during the last couple of years? Because your previous album, A Dream of Wilderness, was released in 2021.
Yes, first, thank you for inviting me, and it's a great pleasure to discuss with you. Well, we're doing very fine. Currently, we're preparing for a upcoming tour, a European tour, which is beginning next week with our new album Utopia, which will be released in 2 days. And on a more long term, we're doing fine as well because finally we can release a new album. And it's been 4 years since the last one. And as you said, it's a long time. We had a lot of issues with the pandemic and all that. So we had difficulties to tour after the release of our previous album. And in 2023, 2024, we toured a lot in Europe. And then we could finally focus on producing a new album.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So now, when do you decide to start writing songs for this new album? Because that A Dream of Wilderness, it was released during the last year of the pandemic. Now we are outside and we have more alternatives to proceed. So when do you decide writing songs for this new album? It was during the composition for the previous album, perhaps during the pandemic, who knows?
Well, I'm very slow to write music, so basically, I began writing this new album in 2022, just after the release of our previous album. And it has been progressively written over the previous 3 years. I know that Marion,
Mhm.
when she writes lyrics, however, she's faster than me.
Okay, I understand completely. So now let's talk about a little more for the promotion for this new album. So you said it, the previous album, well, for the pandemic, there is no shows, there is no live presentation, but then in 2023, 2024, you did a lot of tour, a lot of gigs there in Europe,
Yeah.
especially. So now, how will you promote again to this new? How you will promote this one? Perhaps you release more videos. Perhaps you focus more on this album, and obviously a little part of the focus on the previous one that it was a different promotion, no live presentation at that moment.
Yes, it was complicated to promote our previous album, as you said, because we couldn't
Mhm.
do shows for a very long time. But this time, we are lucky because this time we can do shows. So, just 5 days after the release of our album, we will be touring Europe. Then we will tour France, and we have plans for next year. We are working on plans, and among those plans, there is a plan to come to Latin America to do a Latin America tour. So it's not certain yet because
Okay.
it's difficult. There are a lot of costs, and
Mhm.
we are discussing with different bookers and promoters. But we really hope to make this happen. And this will be for this album the main way for us to promote it because we play a kind of music that is that you need to listen live during a live show to really experience fully. So it has always been the best way for us to promote our music to play it live.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, other detail that you said it is about the situation about the label, because you said it, this music is it's not like the common things. And but for me, when I hear your music, you play like symphonic, like a lot of neoclassic, because you have a lot of neoclassic especially in the guitars.
Yeah,
And just for me, the guttural stuff is like the hard, or is like the extreme part, because mostly
yeah.
the music is power metal with symphonic, with a lot of technique. You are great musicians there, so that's amazing
Thank you, thank you very much.
the rest too. So for this one, how do you label the band of this one? Do you consider it like just for the boys a death metal band, or because for me, you like death metal is not like death metal we know. We know it's like more symphonic power
Yeah.
or neoclassical metal.
Well, that's a good question, and that's always complicated because uh, our metal fans say that we sound like death metal, and death metal fans say we sound like power metal. So basically, no one wants us. So most of the time, we say that we are playing melodic death metal, but symphonic. So symphonic melodic death metal. It's very long. If we have to make it shorter, we just say melodic death metal. Melodic death metal is actually a kind of weird genre of music because in melodic death metal you have bands like Arch-Enemy,
Mhm,
Amon Amarth, Children of Bodom, Insomnium, and all these bands sound different. Or
mhm,
Winter Sun,
mhm,
it's a kind of melting pot label. So we generally say we play melodic death metal, but with symphonic additions.
mhm,
However, we are fine with all labels because labels can't really describe exactly the identity of a band. So it's very subjective. Every person can have their opinion on how to label our music.
mm. Okay, okay. Well, that's interesting. So, yeah, that is right because for me, this the death metal stuff is more like the guttural stuff,
Yeah.
not about the rhymes or the riffs. It's more like a different style, completely different
Yeah.
style. But that's a good thing. In this case, you have a personality in your music. That's the way. That's a good thing. In a year that we are releasing more than 30 releases per weekend, so Aephanemer is like a very a different band compared to the other bands. So
Yes.
now let's talk about all of these kind of topics. So as you can see, there is like 30, 40 releases per weekend. For some bands it's good, for all bands it's bad. So for what kind of opinion do you have for these over releases per weekend? 30, 40 releases per weekend. Is good or is bad for the music industry or the metal industry?
You mean release every week for the record labels?
In general, for the releases for the metal
Oh,
genre.
well, I'm not sure because this is not the kind of stuff I'm really an expert on. But
Mhm.
of course, there are more and more bands who are producing music. So obviously, there will be more and more release. So it's normal to have releases all the time. And the difficulty nowadays is not to find music because when you were looking for metal music like I don't know 20, 30 years ago, it was complicated because you needed to buy a CD in a store and to find it, and often there wasn't a big choice of metal CDs. You had like Metallica, Iron Maiden, and one obscure band. Well, nowadays it's the opposite. There are so many releases, and what is difficult is to find a band you will like. So I think we can't avoid having a lot of releases all the time, and it's great that there are some medias like yours who is helping people to find the music they like with interviews, with some promotion, with labels, with reviews. I think it's very, very important nowadays.
Mm, okay, okay. Well, interesting point. So now, other detail that I denoted for this utopia is especially about the drum parts, because in some ways, since the beginning, you started the band by yourself, creating all the instruments, creating the drums, programming the drums, etc. Since 2013. So then, well, then enter Mariam in 2015, Michael in 2015 also. But then since the beginning, I saw that you create everything. And now when I hear this new album, the drum parts is like some are you programming, and then obviously Michael plays live presentation. That's completely normal. So because the sound is like very clean, especially in the
Yes.
drums, it's very clean. And one thing that the extreme metal now has is that situation that all the extreme bands in the world play so clean, so fast, so techniqued. So for you, how do you avoid to sound so clean in some parts at the same time when you have a lot of technology and trying to prevent that these situations like doing like a machine?
Yes, it's a very interesting question because indeed nowadays you have tools to make very very clean music by cutting things here and pasting here and changing your notes and all that, and every band has to choose which kind of tools you're going to use and how much you're going to use, and there is a risk to create music which is too clean or not enough clean. I will not say that we are doing better than others, because basically on the guitar parts, because it's my part. I generally record many takes and until it's perfect, and it means that when we are playing live, for example, sometimes it doesn't sound as clean, because when it's live I can play the parts three times, it's just one time. So I think it's important to be honest with people, so to not record things that you are not able to play at all, uh, and um, and to avoid using some tools, because well, I don't judge any kind of band, but there are many subgenres of music, of metal and metalcore, where the sound is very edited, with a lot of cuts and all that. It's not the kind of sound that I personally like. I like when it's a bit organic, but um, of course, what I consider to be organic, many people will say it's too clean. It's really there are no good reply. I believe it depends on what you're trying to achieve. But for example, for the bass, because this time I recorded the bass, even if I'm a guitar player, and if you're only listening to the bass tracks alone, well, they are not perfect. They are not perfectly clean and all that, but thankfully, we have a very good mixing engineer. So it's important also to work with a good engineer who will improve what you do, but not too much.
Mm. Okay, okay. So then, in this topic, usually when you create music, you have two feelings. For example, the feeling when you create the music, the riffs, you feel the sensation. This riff is good for this part or is bad
Yeah.
for this part. That's completely normal. But the other thing that all musician has in the world when you create music is the mathematical aspect. When you think in a riff, this good is riff, but you need to think how many times this riff will play. Three, 4 times, 5 times, etc., etc. Or the schemes with the drum parts is with the 3 parts for this, 4 parts of this, eight quarters, eight, etc., etc. But that's completely normal. So in this situation, how do you arrange, or for you, what is the most important thing when you create music? Is the feeling aspect or is the mathematical aspect? Because in the music, both need to be together at the
Yeah.
same time when you create a song.
Yes, that's very true. And these two aspects are very important, and I will tell you how I handle both of them. I will say the most important is still the first one, the feeling, because that's the one I like the most. When I'm writing music during night, because I usually write my music at
Mm.
night when I'm alone and quiet. When I'm writing music, I feel really good when I'm able to find a melody, for example, which sounds exactly like this feeling I have in my head. So this is the part I prefer. But as you said, both parts are important, the feeling and the more mathematical, analytical. And what I do, since I'm writing alone, I can't give my songs to another person who will be more analytical and do all this part. So what I do is that I take a long time. Basically, as I told you before, I began writing this album in 2022, and what I usually do is that for 6 months, sometimes even 1 year, I just write ideas. So I'm only in the feeling part, only feeling. I write ideas and I don't think about how we will use them. I just care if they sound right, if they're pleasant or not. And then I stop writing for like 1 month, 2 months, and then I come back to do the mathematical reasoning and stuff. And I check all my ideas, and I have some new distance with them, and I think, okay, this idea I must repeat it 3 times. This idea is not going to work. That's how I do, and um, there's a lot of intuition, because I don't use music theory uh, when I write. I don't use rules and all that. It's only intuition, but I'm slow, so I do all this, but I take a lot of time to often get some distance between myself and what I wrote 2 months before to have a fresh mind on it.
Hmm. Okay, 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 okay. Now, in this kind of situation, other thing will return into the utopia. So I will ask you something, a very special thing about it. It's a different kind of question. It's not like the how do you feel, this one, because perhaps do you hear about this topic about the synesthesia, about the people when they hear the music, they see
Mm.
colors, they smell taste, there's a lot of things, especially with the sense of the human in this situation. So if we related this topic with the utopia, so what kind of colors, what kind of tastes, and what kind of smells that the listeners will find into this utopia?
Oh, if I was thinking, that's a great question. If I was thinking about colors, I will say there are two main colors in Utopia. One which is uh, like the negative part, the negative emotion, and the other the positive emotion. I will say the negative one will be a dark blue, something dark blue, because for me this is the color of hopelessness and despair and sadness and being pessimistic. It's not the majority of this album, but it's a color that is in this album. For example, in the eighth track, Utopia Part 1, it's the main color. And the other color will be orange. For like the album cover, for me, this color orange is the color of hope, of being optimistic and having hope in the future. So those will be the colors. Now, if I'm thinking about smells, I'm not sure. Difficult for me. When I founded the band 10 years ago, the name of the band Aephanemer, actually it's a merge between two words in French, which are linked to the autumn, the season of autumn, and that's my favorite season. And I will say that the this album feels like and smells like autumn, like when you're in this season, autumn, you have a lot of colors everywhere in the streets, and everything is beautiful, but the trees are dying. So you know that after autumn there is winter, but still it's a beautiful season, even if you know that just after that there is something negative. There is the death of winter. Um, I don't have more ideas.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, not talking about more the cover art for the new for the in general for the FNEMA. So and in this one, since the beginning, I saw that as you said it, you like the van colors in this one. So like the clear a hard colors in this one because the first album Memento Mori is like the Atlantis, something related to that.
Yep.
So if we can relate it, the second album is also had a lot of color. Then the third one is like a wild board in the middle. So that's a curious thing, a wild board with a lot of colors, a brilliant colors. Then this new album also has like these Vivant colors. So in this situation, why always even never used these Vivant colors in all covers? What a special means has for you to the even never has these Vivant colors in all cover arts?
Well, to be very honest, it's always our designer. So this is Niklas Sundin, who was a guitarist in Dark Tranquility. He's doing all our artworks and also designed our logo 10 years ago. And he always proposes some very intense colors and some
Mhm.
original colors. And we always reply, that's okay, we like it, it's beautiful. So it's more his ID than our ID, but we always accept because we feel it it fits with the kind of music we do. Because when you're looking to metal album covers, very often you will have dark colors, like it's black or gray, or and that's fine because of course, negative feelings like anger or sadness are very important in metal music. But for us, we always had the idea to make our music hopeful.
Okay.
Like there are problems and there are issues and difficulties, but we want our music to be hopeful. And we feel that these intense colors, uh, they, 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 they successfully convey this idea of there is hope.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So now let's talk about another kind of things about, especially from France, because since 2000 started, France, especially for Gojira appears in the work, France like get attention a lot in the music in the metal industry with the new bands, with and also you create like a relative new movement with the new sounds, with etc etc. This one, and because I remember, like for example, Blood aus Nord or Blood aus
Yeah,
Nord, Hell Spirit, no, no. Dead Spell Omega, or also
yeah.
a Peste Noire, like the biggest bands from the black metal now in France, with a personal sound, with etc. etc. So now, how do you see the scenes from France compared to the 90s? When in the 90s, France doesn't have or didn't have a lot much. I just know,
No.
for example, 4 or 5 bands. I have here the records from them, but not all. But then in 2000, there appears a lot of bands. Appears you, appears Gojira, or appears a lot of bands. How do you see this scene now?
The French scene is growing. It's very clear because, as you told, as you said, 20 or 30 years ago, the French scene was didn't exist almost, or at least we had a scene, but no one outside France knew our bands. So, I don't know why, and I don't know why it works better now. I think that Gojira helped a lot because, well, in Europe there are a lot of big metal bands from other countries. Like in the United Kingdom, they have Iron Maiden. In Germany, they have Rammstein, Scorpion, and but in France, we didn't have big bands in the 80s or 90s. So I
Mhm.
think we were late on everyone. And Gojira is not big like Iron Maiden, of course, but they're really big. And I think it was important for France to have at least one band who
Mhm.
is successful outside. And so people can think, okay, French, maybe they know how to do metal, maybe, and it helps. And finally, it's getting easier every year because now we have more bands than before, and our scene is still not very big compared to like Germany, United Kingdom. But I feel every year our French scene is growing, and that's very cool. That's very cool, and I think it's going to continue growing in the next 10 years. I'm sure of that.
Okay, okay, that is yeah, that is right because now the scene, the France scene even has a season of Miss, a great labeling, and a great label like one of the biggest labels in the world, the metal world season of Miss.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
true.
great, great. So then this one, so as you can see, there's a like movements in the metal world. The since the beginning, for example, since heavy metal, thrash metal appears, a lot of these. Now there's a lot of people saying that the evolution of the metal, the last parts of the evolution of death metal, it is the death metal for some people, but other people say is the last step. It was el degen. Degen, it was the last evolution for the metal. If we're talking about the evolution of the metal scene, because you can see since the heavy metal appeared, hard rock, heavy metal, thrash metal, death metal, black metal, and then degen, like the last evolution. The progressive metal is in the middle of everything now. This one. So now,
Yeah.
how do you see how which will be the last, the last evolution of the heavy metal stuff in general?
Mhm.
We do you consider that degen is the last evolution, or perhaps do you have a new options in the metal industry that right now has the bigger strength because we are now living in with the sounds of the 80s or and 90s, like or a little
Yeah.
2000 for the degen stuff, but then there's no more sounds or there's no more styles that relate with the new stuff in the metal stuff.
Yes, that's a very interesting question. And actually, this is something that interests me a lot. And a few years ago, I did a lot of statistics, like on all the bands, to try to understand how the waves worked, the
Mhm,
trends. Like this genre is popular than this one and this one and this one, and it was very clear. This, there was a black metal wave at this moment and at this moment and at this moment. I'm not sure of what I'm going to say. I agree that I have the feeling that the gent metal is the last, or maybe one of the last real new metal genre, and I feel like the novelty in metal nowadays is not what we are doing. I feel like the novelty in metal nowadays is on the visual. It is gimmick metal bands. I feel like what is being really, really, really popular, like these 10 last years, it's gimmick metal bands. So basically, metal bands who have a specific gimmick that they are following and with costumes like Batushka, like Windrose, Cannon and Fever, Glory Hammer, even Ghost, if you
mhm,
consider that metal. And like almost all the bands who became big these last 10 years, okay, a big part of these bands, they are gimmick metal bands because nowadays, with internet and social networks and all that, well, I'm not happy to say it, but it seems that most people follow a band first because of how they look. Because when you're on Instagram, YouTube, the first thing you see is, well, what you see is visual. You see a band before you listen to it. So the first thing that helps bands to become big nowadays, it's how they are branded with costumes and a gimmick, like all the bands I talked before.
mhm.
And I feel that this is not something that makes me happy, because I would prefer if the new wave of metal bands were metal bands who are different because of their music and not because of their outfits. But I feel this is what is currently working. But however, I feel this trend is going to reach an end in the next years, because nowadays when there are new bands, small bands with gimmicks, uh, I don't know, but when you see these new bands on Facebook, there are a lot of comments like, "Oh, another band like disguised in monks, or disguised in this or that, or in pirates, or in I don't know, soldiers." And I feel people are getting bored of this, but I'm not sure. We will see. It's very difficult to know, so I'm not sure of what I'm saying, but this is my feeling.
Okay, okay. Well, that's for me. It is the same. The last evolution for for the metal explicitity is the gen that about that. Then there's no more evolution because we are living for the mixtures with a lot of styles now. This,
Mm.
but that is not a real evolution. It's like the we
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
Okay, okay, okay. So we are very close to this interview, Martin. And for for this one, so we are talking about now about we are not talking about, for example, a lot of people saying that you have, well, a lot of great artists has to say, for example, you have to be a second plan when you are a musician, when you have a band, because now it's not, the music industry is not like the 80s or 90s when
Yeah.
you have a get attention for a lot of attention for the media, for the people, etc. Or the people continue at that moment buying CDs, vinyls, T-shirts, a lot, etc. Now the physical stuff decreased a lot in all ways. It's more
Mm.
like you need to play more live presentation to get more attention, because the digital platforms you can see
Yeah.
in Spotify, you have 1,000 per month, but when you go on a tour, just 100 people go to your venue. That's completely normal. So now, how do you see now the music industry, for example, in 10 years or 5 years about this one? The situation will change. Will new bands will rise with a new sound, etc.
Well, thank you for asking this question. This is a very clever question, and this is the first time we get asked about this. Well, the situation of artists is more and more difficult because 20 or 30 years ago, you just needed to be a great artist. But nowadays, you have to be an artist. But you also have to be your own manager, like I'm the manager of our band. And also, you sometimes have to be the booking agent. And also, you need a side job because you're not earning enough with music. And you need to be also a promoter, like to do the promotion online, to schedule all the posts, and to communicate with your fans. And the amount of work is insane because what is happening is that there is still money in the music industry. If you look at the statistics, there is money, but a big part of this money is taken by record labels, by booking agents, by manager, and also by streaming platforms. And it's more and more difficult, even when you're successful as a band, to get like the your money. For example, nowadays if we sell one CD, it is sold like 18 euros. We earn 1 euro. That's just too low. So it's extremely difficult to earn a living with that. So I feel that it's going to get worse for artists for a while, for a few years, until artists realize that they don't need record labels because record labels are not very useful nowadays. They just take a big part of the money. That's to be very honest. This is the honest take. And you don't really need them. You can do the work on your own and you will keep like most of your benefit. And that's how it's going to work. If you just remove all the people who are taking the money from you and you do the work or you pay people to do the work, but you don't get stuck for 10 years with, for example, a record label who will not do the job and who will take all the money. So we are reaching the situation where bands are realizing that the deals are very unfair because they earn less than before, and the record labels, the booking agent, the manager are not working either like before. You still have to do all the job yourself when you're an artist. So I think, to sum up, that in 10 years, a lot of bands are going to be independent again, like Archspire, who just launched a crowdfunding because they were on Season of Mist, and they were saying what I say, that record labels don't give them enough money, and the crowdfunding by Archspire, it worked extremely well, and they have much more money than they could have otherwise. So I think this is the solution, and I think this is what is going to happen in the next 10 years.
Mm. Okay. Okay. I understand. Well, Martin, we are right to the sad moment of this interview. Thank you very much for your time. It was a tremendous
Thanks to
pleasure
you.
to talk with you. This newest album, Utopia, is a great album. Congratulations on this new
Thank you.
one. And perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans that expects your tour? You said it that it's a probability that you will come
Yeah.
next year for a full tour. Who knows?
Yes.
Who knows? We don't know exactly until the dates will be confirmed completely. And obviously, Metallic followers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything. Great questions. And yes, we hope to be able to play in Latin America next year. We are really trying, and we will come sooner or later. That's promise.